after you make your square, you're going to start going this way so that you can create the bee's body. But after you created the square, you're going to add a marker here. So these are going to help you figure out where you're going to end the round, because you're going to work in rounds now. And it's a little confusing if you don't use the markers because it's fuzzy yarn, so you're not going to be able to tell sometimes where the stitch is at the end. You can see it. We're going to do like a chain one and then create the round, and then at the end we're going to do a slip stitch at that chain one or chain two, because that way the stripes are not going to be uneven and they're just going to look like they're supposed to be connected that way and not unevenly connected. The markers are going to help you make sure that it's rowing this way evenly, because if you don't do that, and sometimes you might add an extra stitch or miss a stitch, it's not going to go straight this way. It's going to be a little wonky and like kind of wobbly. So for this one, I tend to add one marker at the last stitch. Here, I'll show you. So here we're actually going to create stitches on the side. So this is where you've ended. And then here we're going to start working on the side of the rows. So on the side, we want to do 10 stitches, because if you do 12, the 3D rectangular shape that you're creating is going to look a little bit like this. It's going to look like it's expanding a little bit, but you want it to actually be like this, and you want the corners to be a little bit more prominent. So there's going to be less stitches on the sides. Then on the sides, instead of going directly here, you're going to go a little bit over to the second row down, not the first row. So there's like a little opening here where you can insert your hook. That's the second row. So you're going to do 1, 10. Okay, so once we reach the 10th stitch on this side, we're going to go and work on the back rows, on the back of the rows at the bottom. So now we need 12. So 1 and then 12 at the end. And then when we go to this side right here, that'll be 10 stitches as well, just like this end over here. So then we're going to reach for not the last row here, but the second to last. 1, 10. So we want to add a marker on the last stitch you just created. And here I'm creating a slip stitch with the first stitch of this last row we created when you were making the square. So I create a slip stitch and I chain 2, 1, 2. So that's gonna count as one single crochet. So then you're gonna do a single crochet in the next stitch. And before you keep going, we are going to add a marker on the chain 2 and also add a marker on that next stitch that you created, so that you know exactly where you are every time you end the round. So you're just gonna keep going until you reach the color changes, and then until it grows all the way to the end, and then I'll show you how I put the tail in, the legs, and the antenna. So once you get to this part, once you're finished making all the stripes, you are going to create a square flap that will close this up. Once you create that slip stitch with the chain 2, you're gonna take the marker off and you're going to create a slip stitch with the next stitches until you get to that corner. So you want to figure out where that corner is if you're not at the corner yet, because you want to be able to create the flap so that when you close it up, it actually looks like a rectangle on this side and not kind of like weird like this, where it's kind of like wonky looking and not straight. So for me, I'm a stitch or two behind my actual corner. So my corner is like right here. So I'm gonna do, let's see, I'm gonna take this off. I'm going to create another slip stitch with the next stitch. And I think I have to create 2 slip stitches just to get to where it's supposed to be. Okay. So it looks like, let's see if I'm actually there. I think I need to go. So if you're not sure, you could probably just like crochet a couple rows before you commit to where you're at. And if it doesn't seem right, you can just frog it and then move left or right to wherever you're supposed to be. So I think I'm going to stop here, and then because it looks good here, so then I'm gonna crochet 12 single crochet. So that's 1, and then that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whoops, 11, 12. So I'm just going to keep going until I reach the shape that I want, which is a square. And so then I'm going to do 12 stitches all the way across for 12 rows. Okay, so you can see that I placed markers for the legs, and you want the head to be pointing this way and your hook to be inserting from the front to the back. So I'm going to take one of the stitch markers off, and I place the stitch markers a 1/4 inch from this edge so that they would all be equally distanced from the edge. But when you crochet the legs on this side, it's going to be, well, you'll see it's going to be different. So I'm going to do this first, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So you're going to insert it from the front to the back, and you're going to create your slip knot. And then you're going to pull it through. And then you're going to do a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you're going to crochet starting in the second chain. So you're going to do 5 single crochets. So once you've done that, you can see there's a little bit of an edge here. So when you finish it off, you can see there's an edge here. And you can either sew it down this way or this way. And I would do it this way because this is already kind of pointing back this way, and you want to have the legs pointing towards the back. So I would sew it down this way to where the legs are pointing towards the back of the bee. So you want to do that for all of the legs on this side. Okay, so now you can see these 3 legs have been crocheted on, and they're all facing the same direction. So now we're going to work on this side. So since the marker is here, you want to go a little bit over towards the middle. So you want to make sure that it's going to be the same width, or the width of one leg. So that seems like an okay place to go. So I'm going to take the marker off, and we're just going to insert the slip knot here. So as you can see right here, you have this edge here, like where it ends. See that straight edge? That will go down like this. So then it's going to be facing the same way as this one, and it's not too close to the edge. That's why we want to start a little bit over, right here, instead of going on to where the marker is. So I'm just going to sew this on here, and then it's going to be about the same distance as it would have been on this side too. So it's going to be a 1/4 inch from the edge. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other legs and sew them down, and then I will show you how I created the antenna. So you can see all the legs are done, and they're all facing that way towards the back. You want to insert your hook the same way, from the front to the back, towards the back. It's kind of hard to tell where the corner is, but you want to guess. And you want to put it about the same distance away as you did with the legs. So a 1/4 inch from this edge. Somewhere here. And you want to take this marker off. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you're gonna do 9 silver trays starting in the second chain hook. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So you want to sew, you want to put this in here. So as you can see, the antenna is curling towards the back, and you want to do the same thing to the other side. And remember, instead of doing it where the marker is, you should do it towards the middle so that when you sew it down, it'll end up here. So now we are going to work on the stinger. So you just want to eyeball where the middle is. And it looks like it's around here. So you want to insert your hook around here. A little off center because you know we're going to sew it down. So you want to insert your hook right here, just a little bit off center, because when you sew it down, it's going to go towards this way. So here you are going to want to fold that in half because you want the stinger to be straight and you don't want it to be curly. And then I want to fold this in half. And I also want to tell you guys that the ends that I cut off like a longer end than usual because this right here, it's kind of frayed a little bit. And if you pull one of these, I want to show you on something else, not on this, because the other two beads that I made, I accidentally pulled one of the ends and it just kind of unraveled. Look, when I pull this end right here, it just kind of falls apart. It's just going to keep going. And then you're going to end up, with this really frail piece right here. And I feel like that's just going to really snap. So you want to be really careful and not pull on the ends and not make your, like when you cut off your yarn after you double knot it or knot it, you don't want to cut it off really short because this can happen and then it's just going to undo your knot and then you're just going to have to crochet whatever you did again. So you want to be careful and make sure when you cut it off, it's a good length, probably about 2 to 3 inches in length. And it doesn't really matter because it's inside, so you can't really see. So you can make it as long as you want. So I made it this long because I did not want it to be unraveled. Now that I've done the legs, the stinger, and the antenna, it's time to sew on the eyes. And then it's time to also sew on the wings. So this is what I like to do on all my plushies. I try to do as much as possible, as much sewing as possible. And then I stuff it